A little bit more to say about measurement mic position, height of measurement mics. A lot of debate on this. I don't think there's any real easy solution. But one thing that often happens is if you have a microphone about your height in the air, say this microphone right here, it's going to receive direct path from the loudspeaker and it's going to see reflections from the loudspeaker a little bit later because it takes time to bounce off the floor. That's going to create a nasty comb. The comb's usually down in the 200-300 range. And most experienced system engineers see that and they ignore it. I like to take the microphone and stick it on the floor for the moment and confirm that reflection is indeed floor bounce. Now some people like to actually put their microphone on the ground and on the floor, and that will show you won't see ground bounce anymore. The problem is no one actually experiences the show laying on the floor, so you're not really doing yourself a lot of help by putting all your measured microphones on the floor. Now, some people have tried taking large pieces of wood. This is from Bob's book, these images, and you put a big piece of wood, plywood, over on top of seats. This gives you the nice, smooth floor bounce, lack of floor bounce measurements, but you have to move a giant piece of plywood around, and of course, no one experiences sound like that anyway. A height of measurement microphone, a little bit more to be said. You could put mics at standing height. Standing height's nice because you're going to see less reflections off the front and back of seats. That's kind of cool. But, people tend to sit in sitting chairs, so you can put some down low and that's going to be more like what they experience, but then it's going to have more combing from the seat back. So I think the best thing to do is kind of vary your height and not be too consistent because people are different heights anyway. So some are standing height and some will be sitting height, and you'll be okay. Just that will help your data be a little bit more consistent. Okay, changing topics to the last thing. So as you go and you tune your sound system to make it sound a certain way, it's really important that you know what your curve is, your target curve. And I advocate thinking that maybe a flat tuning is more useful. And the reason is that if your system is tuned flat, the mix you create will be consistent in locations outside of the venue. Here, let me roll back. A lot of people tune their sound systems with a lot of bass, with a lot of extra subs in it, and that sounds great. You plug in your iPod, you press play, your reference disc just sounds awesome with lots of low end in it. The problem is when you go to mix on that, you don't add any low end because the sound system adds the low end for you. The problem is if you record that mix to a recorder and you give it to the band, or maybe it goes off to a broadcast or goes off to a dressing room or a lobby or something, that bass boost does not show up in these other locations. It only shows up in the sound system. And your mix sounds really thin and has no low end in it. And people start complaining. They go, hey, where's the bass? Where's the kick? I can't hear it. And so this is an issue. So when you have a flat sound system that does not have this big boost on the bottom, it's more consistent. So I advocate you do that. And there's some subtleties here. It's not perfectly flat. It's okay to have a little hump on the bottom. It's okay to roll the top off a little bit, but generally you want flat. Now other engineers, they all want that big booty bump at the bottom, the haystack bass bump. And as long as you know your curve, that's what I'm asking for. As long as you're aware of these issues, then you can go for it with your system tuning. And when you go into system tuning, do avoid narrow bandwidth EQ. It's okay. I advocate big wide EQ. If you want to brighten the system up, fine. If you want to darken it, if you want to add a little thump on the bottom, that's cool. But don't go any smaller than a third of an octave. Don't dive in and be like, you're looking at Smart and you're seeing little squigglies. It's like trying to take the squiggles out. You'll just make your system sound funky. And especially in the high frequencies, when you EQ high frequencies by narrow bandwidths, it may only affect one little spot in the audience in a positive way. You'll move a couple feet away, and that boost you just added to fill in the gap will now be really bright somewhere else. So avoid narrow bandwidth EQ. Be aware that boosts are usually easier to hear with EQ. Not exactly sure why, but when you boost things, they are usually easier to hear than cuts. So be aware of that. And in the end, ultimately, if you can get away with it, the less EQ, the better, because EQ does have a sound to it, and if you over EQ a sound system, it will make it sound bad. So, and if you're using a system like Smart, don't EQ areas that have low coherency and lots of red lines. It's just going to sound bad because that's a bad data spot. Okay, I hope this review lecture brought you back and kind of reflected, helped you think a little bit about speaker systems, and brought that dusted those cobwebs off. And we're going to apply all this stuff in class. I just wanted some moment for you to be sitting there chopping carrots, thinking about this outside of class before we dive into the activities in class. Okay, cool. Have a great night. Bye-bye.